Good morning. On August 5th, 2013, a new Mars rover landed safely on the surface of Mars. The name of the new Mars rover was Curiosity, and the name was actually chosen through an essay contest. The essay contest was for sixth graders, and a young girl named Clara Ma wrote this essay suggesting the word curiosity. Curiosity is an everlasting flame that burns in everyone's mind. It makes me get out of bed in the morning and wonder what surprises life will throw at me that day. Curiosity is such a powerful force. Without it, we wouldn't be who we are today. When I was younger, I wondered why the sky is blue. Why do the stars twinkle? Why am I me? And I still do. I had so many questions, and America is the place where I want to find my answers. Curiosity is the passion that drives us through our everyday lives. We have become explorers and scientists with our need to ask questions and to wonder. Sure, there are many risks and dangers, but despite that, we still continue to wonder and dream and create and hope. We have discovered so much about the world, but still so little. We never will know everything there is to know, but our burning curiosity leads us to learn so much. I like that spirit. You know, it was a good reminder to me of that childhood enthusiasm I had for wanting to learn. You know, as many of you have noticed, you know, as I've mentioned, I'm 58. As years go by, you can start to take things for granted and start to think, you think you've seen it all, but you haven't seen it all. We are reading a book together. I'm going to ask Jesse to put the cover up on the screen. If you're here for the first time, no problem. These are all self-encapsulated Sunday lessons, but we're working our way through the New York Times bestseller, E-Squared, by author Pam Ground. Pam actually goes to Unity in Lawrence, Kansas, and she's a professional writer. She's written screenplays, even TV show episodes. She did a wonderful job of pulling together the Unity philosophy and shirt sleeve English, and sure enough, it's reaching that audience that we know is always out there for our philosophy. E-Squared, from the back cover of the book, it's written, E-Squared could best be described as a lab manual with simple experiments that prove reality is malleable. Consciousness trumps matter, and that you shape your life with your mind. Yes, you read that right. You read that right. It says prove. The 9 experiments, each of which can be conducted with absolutely no money and very little expenditure of time, demonstrate that spiritual principles are as dependable as gravity, as consistent as Newton's law of motion. Rather than take it on faith, E-Squared invites you to prove the following principles. 1, there is an invisible energy force or field of infinite possibilities. In Christian circles, we call it God. Number 2, you impact the field and draw from it according to your beliefs and expectations. What do you believe? What do you expect to happen? Number 3, your connection to the field provides accurate and unlimited guidance. And number 4, the universe is limitless, abundant, and strangely accommodating. So in this book, she pulls together these 9 experiments. So the chapters of the book are actually called experiments. But it does a wonderful job of helping you just let go of old ways of thinking, old beliefs, so that you can indefinitely change the trajectory of your life and your expectations. The intuitive consultant Alan Bridges wrote, what E-Squared is really about is learning to suspend the beliefs that have been drummed into so many of us. Things like there's not enough to go around, and that we don't deserve to be happy, or having what we want is being greedy, or it's merely a pipe dream. It's about unplugging from the beliefs based on scarcity and training our minds to focus on what we want as opposed to worrying about, or read that focusing on or attracting, what we don't want. Field of possibilities. You know, one of the interesting things that Unity, of course, has to contend with on a regular basis is A lot of people have gone through religious abuse earlier in their life. So many of us came into Unity screaming and kicking because we didn't want to have a church experience anymore. And as the message has more and more dispersed through the general population, thanks to people like Oprah and others that have carried forward this aspect of, hey, look, you don't need to be more spiritual, because you're already a spiritual being having a human experience. So that's what we need to wake up to. And the interesting thing about this invisible energy field is that it responds. It is reliable. 100% of the time it will respond to your thoughts and beliefs. So if you think or you believe that it isn't there and it doesn't work, fine. It'll accommodate you. But consider for just a moment that it does work, and that our thoughts and beliefs, if we change them, can change our lives so that we can have more pleasant experiences. It's like math or the law of physics. Now, as I mentioned before, Pam Grant, the author, goes to the Unity Church in Lawrence, Kansas, which is the city where University of Kansas is. Like I've mentioned, it reminds me a lot of Bloomington, but it's about a 30-minute drive west of Kansas City, Missouri. So Pam states three principles very early on in the book. One is that our thoughts create our reality, which of course is one of Unity's principles. There is a power in the universe that supports you in every desire and can heal anything. And then number three, you alone design your life. And she says the problem with these principles is that in our hearts we know they're true, but we talk ourselves out of them, or we don't believe it, because earlier in our life perhaps we tried something and it didn't quite work. So we came up with, see, it didn't work. Or you're waiting for the other shoe to drop, sure, the other shoe drops. In quantum physics, we're taught that everything is made up of vibrating energy. You're sitting in a chair that is vibrating energy. It's of course very dense, that's why you can sit on it and you can support, your weight. But what we also need to realize is that our thoughts kind of project out of us like a radio wave, and that the molecules around us will indeed respond. So this field of potentiality that Pam Grau talks about, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, the founders of the Unity movement, called spiritual substance. And the spiritual substance is kind of like a spiritual Play-Doh. We can pull it forth, and sure enough, it demonstrates in our life. Thing is that very often it demonstrates through a coincidence. Suddenly it's like, isn't that a coincidence? I was just thinking about that. And as I mentioned before, that's why, say, the Harry Potter movies and movies about magic really resonate with us, because there is an element of truth there. That we can speak the truth and it will happen to us. Sometimes instantaneously. Sometimes it takes years of prayer for something to happen. And the years of prayer isn't about making it happen so much as us dropping the doubts that it could happen. Jesus Christ manipulated energy and matter. If you read the four Gospels, it's very clear. And in the Gospel of John, 14th chapter, 12th through 14th verse, Jesus is speaking as the representative of the divine power, that spirituality that we all are. And Jesus says, "Very truly I tell you, the one who believes in me," the Christ consciousness, "will also do the works that I do, and in fact will do greater works than these." So do you believe that? I know some people just aren't that familiar with the Bible or the Gospels, but you see all of these various things that Jesus does. Now, there have been people through the years who've said, all the miracles didn't really happen. That's possible, but what if they did happen? What if you can indeed affect? I read an amazing story of a movie actress that they were having problems because they wanted to do a shoot, and she was actually putting money in producing this movie, but they're having problems with rain. And so she worked with another spiritual person, and they started just embodying clear skies so that they could finish the movie shoot. And sure enough, the skies cleared. They shot the final scenes of the movie they did, and then as they got wrapped up and moved out, the rain moved back in. It sounds preposterous. But especially when two or more are gathered in our name, that we can start to build these expectations as a group. Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote, "All of life is an experiment. The more experiments that we make, the better." Now, in the book, E Squared, starting on page 23, the author talks about science basics. You know what, according to Webster, science is knowledge attained through the study or practice. And it usually starts with a theory. And what's a theory? A theory is a conceptual framework that explains existing observations and predicts new ones. A lot of times with a theory, you can prove that it works, but you don't know how. Like, how does gravity work? You know it works. You know that, if you drop something, it'll hit the floor. You know that if you jump off the top of a building, you'll be meeting the ground real quickly. But nobody's been able to prove exactly how gravity works, but it works. You know that electricity works. You don't need to understand how it works, but you know that it works. You know that if you plug in any electronic appliance, from a curling iron to a computer, it'll pull some of that spiritual substance, and you'll get what you want. Curly hair or the internet. A theory is accepted on the results obtained through observation and or experiments that anyone can reproduce. In fact, Charles Fillmore used to talk about, how he decided after Myrtle healed herself of tuberculosis in the 1880s, it's like, I've got to study this. If it is true, if it is spiritual principle, it can be repeated. If it isn't, what good is it? And that was the approach he took. So curiosity is us being willing to perhaps prove that what we've believed all along is wrong. The author Chris Beatty wrote, "You are doing this because you are fantastic and brave and curious and probably a little bit crazy. But crazy can be a good thing." So, as you launch each of the experiments, 9 in total, jot down the time that you launch each experiment. Most of them, Pam mentions, 7 of the 9. She says, we're looking to demonstrate in 48 hours. Be willing to take notes. What have you noticed as you pay attention, as you triggered this experiment that's supposed to happen in 48 hours? Did you get a sign? Are you willing to prove your past experiences wrong? So chapter number 1, or experiment number 1, is the Dude Abides principle. And in 1998, there was a movie that came out, The Big Lebowski. Yo. Yeah. Loosely, The Big Lebowski is played by Jeff Bridges, loosely based on a fellow in Hollywood who everybody seems to know, but nobody knows what he does. And it's just this fantastic movie. But it's funny because some people when I saw it in 1998, some people were walking out of the theater halfway through. It's like, I don't know what the hell they're talking about. And a lot of times that's what God is like, right? It's like, I don't know what the hell it is. But one of the things is the dude abides, but the dude abides principle. And she talks through this chapter, starting on page 32, of the various misconceptions that have been drummed into us about God. God is a bearded dude who sits on a cloud, watching everything we do. God is too busy to handle your little problems. God rewards your suffering. And God has to delay your good. All of these various things that have been drummed into us, which helps us explain away, perhaps, that principle doesn't seem to work the way we think it does. Now, on page 27, Pam writes, this experiment will prove to you, once and for all, that there is a loving, abundant, totally hip force in the universe. Some people call it God. Some people call it prana. Some people call it the one. Some people call it the all there is. You can call it whatever you want. You can call it Cosmo Kramer if you want. Just know that it's there. It doesn't matter whatever name you use because it will work for you, provided you shed all of these misperceptions about what it is and how it works. So to do this experiment properly, you have to set aside any skepticism that you may have. This is a 48-hour experiment. So kind of look at your watch. 2 days from now, 48 hours. Be curious enough to expect the dude to show up in living color. Expect it with your whole heart and expect it with every ounce of your soul. Now take note of how you feel about that. How do you feel? And the interesting thing about this particular first experiment, she says you don't get to designate what it is. All you say is that, okay, I'm willing during the next 48 hours to allow the creative foundation of the universe, God, whatever it is, to prove that it exists. It'll be a very clear sign. I can't brush it off as coincidence. It will just happen. It will just happen. Because in 3 weeks, you will get to designate what it is that you want to demonstrate. But first, in order to have that happen, you need to know, yes, God is here. The field of potentiality is here. And it works. It responds to my thoughts, to my beliefs. So by triggering this, just know. And you will know through your intuition whether it works. So if you don't, now here again, you get what you expect. So you decide, prove it or not prove it. Sometimes when someone starts out with principles, they're still a little doubtful. So like Pam writes, she says, now if you go 48 hours and you don't think you've seen a sign, that's okay. Just write it off. We've got 9 experiments to work on. But be willing to be proved wrong. Now in the Gospel of Matthew, the 5th, 6th, and 7th chapter of the Gospel of Matthew, if you've never cracked open a Bible or haven't done it for some while, those are 3 amazing chapters in the book of Matthew. That's what it's called Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. It's kind of a compilation, kind of an overview of his teachings. So the 5th, 6th, and 7th chapter of the Gospel of Matthew. In the 6th chapter, 22nd verse, as he's talking with the people. Jesus says, the eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is single, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is not single, your whole body will be full of darkness. No one can serve 2 masters, for he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. Therefore, I tell you, do not be anxious about your life. God and mammon. Now, mammon essentially means the materiality of the world, especially, stuff like money, the outer appearances of the world. So if you are going to worship the outer appearances of the world, you will be disappointed. I have not met one person yet whose life has gone exactly the way they have wanted it every moment of their life. Because this is the physical world. However, God is an absolute realm which always works. So your eye being single is a sense of focus. Can you focus on God? There's a big difference between belief and faith. With faith, the only way you can truly get results is to place your faith in God, the field of potentiality, that sense that this stuff works. So if your focus is there, and I know it can't be there 100% of the time, but as I've said before, if you can get it to the point where 51% of the time, or 50.1% of the time, you're focused there, you will see the big difference. Place your faith in God. No matter what's happening out here, you know it's going to be okay. You know that your highest good is unfolding. And also part of focus is being willing to pay attention, to see that, sure enough, if you focus on God, sure enough, the pleasant stuff starts to happen. Your needs are met. Your obligations are fulfilled. Your desires are demonstrated. So here's what you do. On page 40 of the book, E Squared, it reads, ask the field of infinite possibilities to make its presence known. Ask for a blessing. A blessing is confer prosperity upon. So it would be, your occupation, your health, your relationships, your financial supply, whatever it is. Ask for a blessing. Now, you don't get to specify the blessing this week, because we're going to do that in 3 weeks during experiment number 4. So the question, does the field of possibility exist? The scientific hypothesis. If there is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week energy force, equally available to everyone, I can access it at any time simply by paying attention. Furthermore, if I ask the force for a blessing, giving it a specific time frame and clear instructions, it'll send me a gift and say, my pleasure. Time required, 48 hours. So, like I said, if you don't want to start at this moment, mull it over. But whenever you decide to go with it, write down the time and the date. You've got 48 hours. Pam wrote, and Pam continues to write, my approach to this was, I hate to break it to you, field of potentiality, but folks are starting to talk. They're starting to wonder, is this guy for real? I mean, really? Like it'd be so much skin off your chin to come down here and call off this crazy hide-and-seek thing that we've been playing. I'm giving you exactly 48 hours to make your presence known. I want a thumbs up, a clear sign, something that cannot be written off as a coincidence. Now for me, I've actually started a new 48-hour experiment, so I'm in the midst of that right now. But the first time I did this was in 1986, when my life had really taken a turn for the unpleasant. I was going through a divorce from my first wife and feeling suicidal. And so at one point I was just kind of like, I was just kind of cursing at God, the God up in the sky with the beard. It's like, what's the use? The world wouldn't miss me. In fact, I felt a lot like George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life, ready to jump off the bridge, right? And all of a sudden, what flashes in my mind are these 2 times that I should have been killed, and I wasn't. And both times I was driving the same little Datsun B210. First time, I was driving from Peoria, Illinois, where I was working, up to Chicago, where my first wife was in the hospital. And it just started to rain, and if you've ever noticed when it just starts to rain, all of the old rubber particles from the tires and the oil is still on the pavement, so it's slick. Sometimes a little bit slipperier than ice, and it just lasts a short time. But I'm just about to hit one of these curved ramps, and I'm cruising at about 55 miles an hour, and it says speed 25. I'm like, ooh. So I started to tap on the brakes, and the car started to slide sideways. And I'm sitting there looking at this pole coming right at me and thinking, oh man. And then all of a sudden the car stopped and turned suddenly onto the ramp. The other scene that jumped into my head, same little car, I'm driving in eastern Kansas along an Interstate 35. We've got one of these grass medians like we do, and I'm trying to pass a truck, and it's snowy, slushy, kind of like this morning. And I'm passing this truck, and the truck pulls over, and I get thrusted off into the median strip. But I'm sailing along like nothing had happened, because it was nice and icy and slushy. So I just slowly turned the wheel back on and came back onto the highway, and I was fine. And God said, look, you didn't die each of those times because you've got so much more to do. And besides, if you commit suicide, you'll come back in your next life, and it'll be even harder to move through the spiritual lesson that I'm trying to teach you right now. So are you willing to keep on keeping on? And then after all that happened, 1 week after I had separated from my first wife, I meet a woman named Carla Golden. Uh-oh. So God, okay, I could pass all of those off as coincidences, but it was like, no, it was very clear to me. It's like, okay, maybe I do need to let go of wife number 1 and be willing to embrace something new. Yeah, it was painful. And I'd had my doubts. As months go by, it's like, oh, I must be crazy. And it was funny because at times my first wife would call me and say, I really want you back. And I'm like, no. And then there'd be times I'd call her, I'd be the one to come back. She's, no. God works in mysterious ways. But sure enough, each time it was like, yeah, okay, we had our doubts. 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but I kept moving forward. So are you willing to prove perhaps your past beliefs wrong? Then be willing to do this experiment. We have a Facebook page, Unity of Indianapolis, but we also have another set aside for this experiment, or these 9 experiments. It's Book Discussion Group of Unity of Indianapolis. That's Book Discussion Group of Unity of Indianapolis. So go ahead and post what happens there. Or drop us a note or an email. Share it with your others. I know, of course, we've got about 10 small book groups going on where people are meeting on weeknights to just kind of go through these. But I really encourage you to do this. This is a wonderful overview of unity principles. And the magnificent thing about unity principles is it changes lives for the better. So if you do want a change, be willing to ask the dude to prove itself to you in the next 48 hours. Now, our closing story is a 2.5-minute video from Steve Hartman of CBS Evening News about a young woman who asked for a sign from heaven, and she was able to heal the guilt from something that happened earlier in her life.
Earlier this month, out of the clear blue sky, a small Mylar balloon floated into the parking lot of the local Heroes restaurant in Auburn, California.
Yeah.
Lisa Swissley is the owner.
I found the balloon right over here.
Right over here?
Yeah, and I saw some writing on it and started reading it a little bit, and oh my gosh, it was so deep and emotional.
The balloon was signed by a girl who lived 450 miles away in Whittier, California. Her name is Ashlyn Maracino. She's 16. And although she was happy to learn someone found her balloon, that restaurant was not her intended target.
Have you ever let a balloon go and watch it? It really does look like it's going to heaven. And that's like, I want him to know that I still love him and all that.
Ashlyn meant that balloon for her father. Scott Maracino died of an aneurysm in 2009. And Ashlyn has been sending him messages on his birthday ever since. On this balloon, she wrote, "Dear Dad, you have missed so much, and I miss you. There's this guy I met, Bryant. He's really nice, funny, and sweet. I've been playing softball for 11 years. I'm hoping you're helping me get those home runs."
I wanted to share my accomplishments, my life. I wanted to tell him what he missed out on.
And most importantly, she wanted to apologize for all the times she didn't write. Scott spent a few years in jail for robbery, and during those years, he sent Ashlyn hundreds of letters and handmade cards.
I never responded.
You never answered him?
Never a real letter, no.
Even after he got out and turned his life around, Ashlyn says she still ignored his phone calls sometimes, including the one she got right before his aneurysm.
I didn't answer the phone, and what if he wanted to say, I love you, and I would have liked to say that, but I didn't get to.
How many of us go to bed at night with the same potential for regret? How many of us might one day be just this desperate for one last contact? Fortunately for Ashlyn, she's pretty sure she got through this time. On the balloon, she asked her dad for a sign, and when someone somehow found her note in the local Heroes parking lot of all places, that was enough for her.
Just gave me faith and hope again and reassurance, and it's pretty amazing.
Take it from an angel. Steve Hartman, on the road, in Whittier, California.
From the Gospel of John, 4th chapter, 46th verse. At Capernaum, there was an official whose son was ill. He went and begged Jesus to come heal his dying son. And Jesus therefore said to him, "Unless you see signs and wonders, you will not believe." Jesus said to him, "Go, your son will live." The man believed the word and that Jesus spoke to him. He went his way, and his son was healed. And may you always be open to God's guidance and grace. It is now time for our tithes and offerings. And as you prepare your offering, if you give electronically with the donation tab on our website, just hold the amount that you give. If you write a check or you're giving cash, just hold that amount and open your heart truly for love. And shift your feeling right now. Feel what it's like to be rich. We get what we expect. We get what we believe. Feel the relaxation that comes from knowing that all needs are met, all obligations are fulfilled, all your desires are demonstrated. The dude abides principle. Let's say the affirmation on the screen together. Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I give, all that I receive, and I am grateful.
My experiment is whether my songs would mesh. The song's called Encircling Light. Spin in a circle, fall into night. Spin in a circle and let go of the night. Spin in a circle and follow the light. Spin in a circle and embrace the light. Turn it away from night. Turn it shadows behind. Circles and circles and circling light. Our worlds turn in circles and we turn and wonder how never we shine. Run in a circle, run into the past. Run in a circle and get nowhere fast. Run in a circle with people you know. Run in a circle because they say so. Running, racing with night. Running, shadows behind. Circles and circles and circling light. Our worlds turn in circles and we turn and wonder how much we could shine. Dance in a circle with people you love. Sing in a circle a message of love. Live in a circle what goes comes around. Dream in a circle where futures are found. Dream it, awake from night. Dream it, future is sight. Circles and circles and circling light. Our worlds turn in circles and we turn and wonder how brightly we shine. Circles and circles and circling light. Our worlds turn in circles and we turn and wonder how it one day was passing, and the darkness had asked, how long would the emptiness last? The night sky grew bright, filled with a light that a star can shine. Open your eyes, your search is mine. Guidance divine is leading. In one heart, our souls will find God's love. Each word that I speak, I carefully seek to move within love's reach. The meaning is clear, with you standing near forever is here. Look at my heart, torn, even broken apart. Love's resurrection is healing, revealing. Radiant light, reflecting in your eyes. Love is God's touch. God's touch is love. The journey's on wings, pressed into being through weekends of dreams. The sun beams through clouds and points with no doubt awaking. Oh, child, it must be you. I am singing you. Oh, it's surely true. In seeing and feeling God's touch as our hearts beat as one. Love is God's touch. God's touch is love. Yes, love is God's touch. Love is God's touch. Love is God's touch. God's touch is love. No beginning or end, we are reflecting every woman in there.